Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing well today. I hope you're enjoying March so far. It's just so nice to feel as though summer is coming. I am so excited. Something that has definitely been on my mind in the past month or so is peace of mind and how we should try and strive for that, and how other people can impact our peace of mind, how our tendency to overthink, especially as people pleasers, can really get in the way of kind of getting that peace for ourselves and creating that peace for ourselves. And I kind of wanted to talk about 3 specific things that are really important to like peace up here and just general contentness in life. That is rejection, projection, and deflection. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on all of those things, but basically overall it relates to the fact that humans have certain coping mechanisms to deal with things that bother them and to deal with things that are negative and unpleasant in their life, and it's really nothing to do with you. Learning to not take things personally, especially in terms of how people behave towards you, is a really key component of just reducing your suffering. Not taking things personally is so important because it means that you are able to kind of function, have energy for things that are actually important, rather than overthinking, worrying too much about what somebody else thinks and whether or not their behavior towards you is about you, because it really rarely is. Everybody has a different perspective, everybody has a different upbringing, everybody has different triggers. Based on this then, understanding that no one person has the exact same perspective as somebody else, that kind of then explains why people's behaviour is never about you, because it's all about their own experience. They are behaving through a lens of their own perspective and through their own trauma. It's not about you 99% of the time. And once you kind of accept this, you can live a more peaceful life. It becomes dangerous, especially when you're a people pleaser, because you are so used to internalizing those feelings. Because when you were younger, you had to understand the emotions in the room. You had to understand how people were reacting, how people were feeling, in order to kind of keep the space safe. It helps them assess the situation better and learn to adapt. That's particularly dangerous because it's not up to you to kind of mold around other people and make sure that your emotions take a backseat. It's really important to unlearn that, because it's not about you and it's not up to you to change or mold around other people. So that's what today's video is going to be about, learning about those 3 things, understanding why people do those 3 things, and hopefully that will kind of like reassure you that it's not about you. If you want to feel peace and if you want to be set free and if you want to understand humans a little bit more, then keep on watching. The first thing I'm going to talk about is projection. This is the one that everybody knows about. It's this idea that we all present a mirror to somebody else, and if somebody sees in that mirror something that bothers them, something they don't have, something they wish they had, something they're envious of, something they're jealous of, something that makes them triggered, it's going to be taken out on you because you are embodying what makes them uncomfortable. Say if you are pretty happy in your life, content, you're happy, you like yourself, you like the way you look, you like, your personality aspects about you, and you come into contact with somebody that isn't happy in themselves, doesn't like parts of them, you are gonna mirror back to them those things that they perhaps wish that they had, that confidence in themselves, that confidence in their appearance, and that's gonna bother them. And instead of thinking to themselves, right, this person is reflecting back to me something that I know I need to work on, I know that is something that I'm keen to have eventually. Instead, people take it at face value and think that, oh, I just don't like this person. That person's unwilling to look further into themselves and understand why they're triggered and why it bothers them. It's easier for them to blame it on that person, and it's easier for them to blame the trigger or the discomfort on that being like an issue with that person that they've kind of come into contact with, than it is to look internally and think to themselves, why is that triggering me? Why is that bothering me? Is it something that I need to work on? It's often so covert and so sinister, because when someone behaves, like shit towards you, I think normal sort of human behaviour, we do generally seek validation from other people. So when we are faced with somebody that isn't kind or just is like unpleasant, we're thinking, why are they pleasant with me and not with other people? Like, it makes you think that there's something wrong with you, and it's just never the case. If you're a happy person, if you're someone that likes themselves, likes parts of themselves, it is going to bother people that don't, and that's not about you, that's about them. But unfortunately, you just happen to be the person that kind of presents that, reflects that back to them. That doesn't mean that you need to change. Obviously you don't need to change, you just carry on being you. It just means that that person, instead of like looking inside, they're going to blame you for the way that they feel. And it is depressing, but most humans function like this. They don't have the emotional maturity to understand or like look internally and understand that the issue they need to resolve is their responsibility. It is often much easier to project onto other people than to look inside, because healing work is hard. We all know that. And most people don't want to do it. When people project, it's not about you. They are projecting their own insecurities and their own what they perceive to be shortcomings onto you. Kind of connected to that then is like, you know, taking people's advice. Everybody comes to the world with different life experiences, different perspectives, different traumas, different kind of emotional baggage, I suppose. And so when taking advice from somebody or somebody else's opinion, I think it's always good to get advice and opinions and just sort of like maybe understand yourself a little bit more. I don't think that advice and opinions or other people's advice and opinions are completely redundant, but I do think it's important to take other people's opinions, especially when making a decision about your life, with a pinch of salt. So for example, boomers have grown up to understand that, you know, work really hard, manage your manager, be grateful for a job, and that is just not the perspective that is relevant anymore. It is important not to internalise the opinions of those people that have had a completely different life experience, have understood a completely different way of work, or in this example. And so based on that then, it's important not to make career choices based on what boomers or even millennials say, because they have had a completely different experience with work. You know, they didn't have the option to work from home. The job market is kind of on employees' side now, not employers, and all these kind of things. So that's a good example of like taking your parents or boomers' advice with a pinch of salt, because it's a completely different landscape now. Even 5 years ago it was. Based on that then, it's important not to internalise other people's opinions and life experiences when it comes to decisions. You can use it as a tool, but I don't think it's good to take their advice verbatim. It's based on their life and their life is different from yours. That's kind of the crux of it. Limit the amount that their advice and opinions affect your decisions. Going back to what we were saying earlier about people projecting their own insecurities onto you, it's absolutely crucial that you do not let them gaslight you into thinking that the problem is you. It is not. People will go to great lengths to avoid their own pain and to avoid their own insecurity and healing, and they will go to the extent of making the problem you and making out as if the issue is like your issue when it's theirs. People will be banking on the fact that you internalize it and think that it's about you to make themselves feel better, because if they can make you feel low and if they can make you feel like you're the problem, that depressingly is the only way that they're going to feel good about themselves or like higher than you in that moment. The next thing is deflection. Most people really struggle, especially if they're not interested in sort of self-development, reflection, will struggle to take personal accountability and responsibility for things that they have done, their behaviour that might have affected somebody negatively. Never ever let yourself regret calling out behaviour that isn't okay. One of these things that I've really found, especially in relationships, is when I've brought something up that bothers me, the other person has in the past deflected, because they don't want to take personal accountability for the behaviour that has affected me in a negative way. That would ruin their self-concept and their understanding of who they are. You know, having that sort of veil come down is more scary to them than actually, you know, looking inwards and being like, you know what, that behaviour wasn't okay. Learning about myself a little bit more to understand why that would have affected somebody negatively. Many people, just as the example that I've given, will, instead of looking inwards and instead of just taking it on the chin, I guess, criticism that is actually probably quite constructive, they will potentially turn it around on you, which is the deflection taking place. They will start pointing out behaviours that they don't like about you in the middle of maybe a discussion about one particular point that you're bringing up, in order to distract you and sort of derail what you're trying to express, what you're trying to say, the conversation, the good communication that you're trying to have with that person. Because again, they don't want to take responsibility, so by bringing up topics or bringing up things that they think that you do wrong in an argument in order to kind of like deflect from having to discuss the issues that you're having with their behaviour, is what they're going to do. It's what immature people do. It's what people that don't have, you know, much sort of emotional maturity do, and you've got to be able to pinpoint it, because lots of people will use this as a technique in order to, like I said, derail what you're trying to say, and deflect from the point you're trying to make and distract you. Is so manipulative. A classic thing that people who deflect do is sorry, I've just got a really nice text. One thing that people that deflect tend to do is complain about your reaction to their behaviour, because again, it's part of derailing, it's deflecting. It's like, nothing's about me, I'm just gonna put it all onto you, deflect, and just put all of the problems, all of the issues that we're having onto you. But lots of people will use that as a mechanism to gaslight you into thinking that the issue is you, as if the problem is you bringing up the issue rather than their initial behaviour. So fucking manipulative. Deflection is so sinister, and is probably one of the most advanced forms of manipulation, because it can really get you into, like, it can really psychologically like affect how you see yourself. And it's really important, especially as a people pleaser, to be able to clock when someone's deflecting and when someone's trying to like avoid taking accountability and avoid it being their issue, and then going back to sort of projecting that onto you. People that do it are the people that are unwilling to look internally, their own inability to control their ego. It's not personal, it's not about you, it's a them problem. So the final one is rejection, which is a really important one, I would say, and something that actually I think everybody grapples with rejection. And I think there's so many ways that rejection comes into your life. It can be, you know, in your career, it can be in friendships, it can be in relationships, it can be, you know, amongst your family. When someone does reject you, it's always about what's going on in here, it's always about them, and it's not something that you need to take personally. When you get discarded or rejected by somebody, it is usually about their inability to communicate with you, their inability to kind of manage their own insecurities, or really take accountability for something that you might have brought up that bothered you. People do not like it when they are told that there's something they've done wrong or affected somebody else negatively. Nobody likes to hear that. And so some people choose to reject that person because that person is a reminder that they have done something wrong, that they are not perfect, that they have affected somebody in a negative way. And you know, it's hard for the ego for most people, because they don't want to think that they have done something wrong. You know, most people struggle with taking constructive criticism. Nobody, you know, can probably say that they enjoy that. It's not nice, but there's some people that choose to kind of take it on board because they want to improve, they want to get better, their ego is smaller, and there's other people whose ego is massive and they can't imagine the idea that they do things that are wrong. And those people tend to be the people that reject. When you are somebody, without obviously meaning to, brings out those insecurities in other people, you are going to get the brunt of the negative behaviours that come with that person experiencing those insecurities and those triggers. You are going to find that people will reject you or reject what you have to say because they do not want to experience that negative insecurity that simply by you just sort of existing or speaking up brings about in them. You know, they have to then go through the process of either healing or swallowing that insecurity, and both of those things are very unpleasant. You unfortunately become a reminder to them of those insecurities and those triggers that they don't want to deal with, and that's not about you, that's about them needing to reject you in order to avoid actually facing those insecurities that arise when you're speaking about something that isn't okay. It's still like you're presenting a mirror to them, especially when that person knows that you're probably telling the truth. That is uncomfortable to them. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear they have a negative impact on other people. It hurts their ego too much, so they might reject you, and they will just sort of push you away. You're basically confirming subconsciously those traits in them that they are in denial about. You're subconsciously confirming that they have work to do and that they need to face their trauma, they need to face their insecurity. For some people, it is not part of their desire and want to get better, to want to improve, to want to become a better person. Even that subconscious reminder that is represented in you is too much for some people to handle, and they will make the problem seem as if it's you, when it's not, it's really just them. From the perspective of dating then, sometimes we get rejected because we remind somebody of what they are not or what they cannot do. And that for some people that for most people will lead to rejection. We often deduce rejection to being because we are not good enough or we cannot give that person what they're looking for, and we kind of think to ourselves, what's wrong with me? You know, what am I doing that's wrong? None of that matters. It's usually because you represent somebody that person cannot provide for. I mean, especially when you're like a high quality person, sometimes, you know, high quality people get rejected, not because they're not good enough, obviously, but because the person knows deep down that they do not have the capacity to show up for that person in the way that they deserve. And they will often, you know, reject you because that's easier for them and their ego than to admit to themselves, or at least even try and attempt to show up for you in the way that you deserve. That fucks with people's ego, and it's not pleasant, so they just won't do it, they'll just reject. They don't want to reach that point where they are shown so clearly that they cannot show up for you, because they're probably already insecure about it anyway. They would rather reject you before getting to that point, and they'd rather, you know, avoid that feeling, which I get, but equally, you know, maybe it's something to work on. At least their ego feels happy and good that they were the one to reject that other person, and that other person might feel a bit low for it, and that makes them for a split second feel better about the fact that they know deep down that they could never have shown up for that person in the way that they deserved. So that's why you should never take it personally, because rejection isn't personal. It's often, you know, especially 99% of the time, obviously if you do something wrong, they can understand why someone might reject you, but generally speaking, we're talking about situations where you're left feeling bewildered and sort of shocked that someone's rejected you out of nowhere. It's more often than not about them, their own sort of even dating situation. It's not about you, it's not personal, it never is. So that's it for today. I think the kind of key message is really not to take things personally, because it just never is. The amount of peace and sort of reduction suffering that comes with clocking those times and like reassuring yourself in your head when you kind of come across these situations is just amazing, because you have so much more energy for yourself and you kind of go through life with so much more emotional stability, and your nervous system is happier and more stable when you learn to not take things personally. So I hope you enjoyed this video, I hope you found it useful. Please sound down in the comments if you did want to hear what you have to say, and with that, I hope you have a great week or weekend, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.